Tore my ACL and now just in the long road of rehab. And
This means that you're being worked very hard domestically at the moment. Is that what's happening?
pretty good at folding washing and stacking the dishwasher and different jobs here and there.
You're a Queenslander, as we know. When did football sort of first come into your life? At what sort of age? Because I know you're a rugby league fan as well, aren't you?
Grew up supporting the Broncos and love watching my league and Origins as a kid. My dad was a rugby league player and my oldest brother was, so I kind of wanted to do that. But while I was at school, that a lot of the kids were playing. There was no contact sports of, say, tackling and rugby and whatnot, so we all just played soccer.
The year 11, year 12, you came into the orbit of a certain well-known coach.
Ange Postecoglou was the head coach of the under-17s national team at the time. And I was one of the highest goal scorers in that tournament, and he chose me for his squad.
To your dream car rental dream team, because this could take a while. You've got to be in it. Let's start at the back. Who's in goal?
Gabor Kirili, famous in the Premier League for
the trousers,
forgetting his pants and having to wear track pants.
But I do like the way you're really tailoring this specifically to six-a-side rather than just picking six of the
so
best
obviously
players.
I'm going to have to put myself up with Robbie Fowler and David Villa.
Hi guys, Gareth Morgan here once again with another episode of Glory Stories, the club's official podcast brought to you in association with our proud club partners and good friends Drimtel, Perth Glory and Drimtel, a winning combination. Now, I would go as far as to say that today's guest could be described as a genuine Australian football legend. I'm going to embarrass him a little bit with this. I would even perhaps stretch it out to Australian football royalty. And I'm going to give you just a couple of facts and stats to justify that rather grandiose description. Just try some of these on for size. More than 220 A-League games, 51 goals. He played in torrential tropical tempests in Townsville, cruel COVID conditions in Calcutta, winning an Indian Super League title, by the way. He was also part of one of the most successful A-League strike partnerships in history during a stint with Wellington Phoenix. He scored goals in Denmark. He scored plenty more goals in Hungary. And on top of all that, he wore the green and gold, and the famous purple as well. So as they say, there is a lot to unpack. And without any further ado, I will introduce our studio guest today, just in case you somehow haven't guessed who it is. It is, of course, David Williams, the one and only. Willow, fantastic to see you, mate. Thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks for the intro, mate. I feel quite blushing if you could see my cheeks at the moment.
That's good. I'm just glad I managed to get through it. I'm delighted with that. Now, mate, unfortunately, we do sort of have to start, I suppose, on a little bit of a downer. If I could just take you back to the 27th of December, the home game against Macarthur, around about 16 minutes in. If you want to take up the story from there and just let everyone know where you're at in terms of following on from what happened.
Yeah, just an unfortunate incident that, the positive thing I can say is I didn't have it during mid-career, I would say. It's, coming towards the end of my career. Tore my ACL and, had about a month off of rehab and getting, mentally right for everything, and then went into surgery late January to reconstruct that ACL. So now just in the long road of rehab and I'm post-recovery, so I'm in the gym now and doing a lot of work with the physios and whatnot. So long road ahead, and I'm just trying to again get my head around that. I definitely won't be playing any more games this season, unfortunately, but I can see the positive side of where this is going, and also I can't just let this small amount of time in my career really affect me in a negative way. So it's part of the parcel. I've been very lucky not to have any major injuries in my career. So look, it's disappointing not to be involved at the moment, looking from the stands, but I'm still involved with the boys and match day responsibilities as well.
Did you know instantly what it was?
I had a feeling, but I didn't know because I actually didn't feel too much there. I felt more so my MCL, which I've done before, and that was an injury where it kept me out for a few weeks, but I knew I'd done something, so I was kind of just clutching at the knee, and then I had some words from Luke Bratton to say when he did he didn't feel it at all, walking off the pitch and whatnot. So in that time, I felt, look, it could be more serious than what it is. And, yeah, it was kind of, said by the physio that it's, most likely an ACL. So it kind of hit me a little bit later, not so much there. I was just really up for that game, to be honest. The previous game, we put a lot of effort in. We got a win away, and then there was a little bit of momentum there, and I think maybe that part of the game as well, I was really pushing myself and throwing myself at things, and I just had a want to win and a will to win, and kind of made a silly mistake in the way I went to shoot, which wasn't a very experienced option, and that's how I got injured. So sometimes in the when you're in that frame of mind and the ball's coming across and it's quick and whatnot, that's just the way that professional footballers can get injured. Yeah.
Now, there was an amazing outpouring of support for you, just so much social media, in person, so on. It must have meant a lot at what would have been a pretty devastating time for yourself. Yeah,
definitely. I feel like I added a lot to the group, and especially around the fans the last couple of years that I've been here. So to get that response from people, and a lot of messages have come through, which make me feel good. Sometimes you get a bit emotional about it, but I'm really settled with where I am at the moment and with how things have panned out. Obviously I do appreciate everything people have said and written in, and even just conversations that I've had at around the grounds in the last 6 weeks anyway.
You have mentioned that this means that you're being worked very hard domestically at the moment. Is that what's happening? You've been put to work.
Yeah, it's pretty good at folding, washing, and stacking the dishwasher and different jobs here and there. Started to get back into the cooking as well. So look, there's things I can do that I've been doing before and whatnot, but my focus is really turned to the family and kids, and school's back now as well, so getting them prepared. So between my wife and I and her work, it's really sorting them out and making sure that the odd jobs around the house are done and the pool's clean and stuff like that. So
yeah, you're a busy man. I mean, really coming into this show, David, to be honest, the biggest issue was what to leave out, because inevitably with a career as long as yours, there's so much just on the pitch stuff to discuss, but equally you're a very busy man. You always have been, pretty busy off the pitch as well. Just on that, like, do you actually relax by being busy? Do you find it hard to relax? Because every time I see you or speak to you, you're either on your way somewhere, you're on your way back from somewhere. You've got about 16 different kind of pots on the boil at any one time.
I do try to find ways to relax. I think, especially with having kids and doing things are always needed to be done around the house, and it's kind of like an engine that never stops. And then it gets to later on at night when the kids are in bed and asleep, then you kind of get that period of between, say, 7:30 or 8 o'clock until whenever you choose to go to bed, which might be 10 or 11, but that feels like the period of rest in a day. So, there's different times where I've, obviously rested after training and whatnot, but sometimes I get home from training and I've only got 45 minutes before I have to get to the school to get the kids. So, look, I think keeping the mind occupied is good. I mean, our job profession is quite strenuous and stressful at times, and we've got a lot on our shoulders to perform and get results and whatnot. So I just think it's part of the job where if we can get home and really switch off for that little bit is very beneficial. But yeah, in short, I don't get too much time to relax.
No, I get that impression. Mate. But you just touched on your current family life at the moment. If I can take you back now to growing up, because you're a Queenslander, as we know. When did football sort of first come into your life? At what sort of age? Because I know you're a rugby league fan as well, aren't you?
Yeah, grew up supporting the Broncos and love watching my league and Origins as a kid. My dad was a rugby league player and my oldest brother was, so I kind of wanted to do that. But I think just while I was at school that, you know, a lot of the kids were playing, there was no contact sports of, say, tackling and rugby and whatnot, so we all just played soccer. So Dad saw some sort of talent in me with that as well, and just continued on to club, signed me up, and just progressed through the ranks. Seems a bit more complicated these days to come through the ranks. But yeah, that's kind of how I got into it. My granddad, he and my grandma, they're from Scotland, in Edinburgh specifically. So, you know, from that influence as well, I think I've grown up to really love the game and, you know, do well at it, as I could probably say.
And what was it about football in particular that you loved as a child? Was it just all about goals? Was it?
I don't remember really. I think more for me, it was just being active and outside, and I just constantly remember Mum saying, "Stop kicking the balls in the house, stop kicking," and then I'd find ways to keep it quiet, or, you know, put like sleeping bags over balls, or not sleeping bag, pillowcases over balls, and tying it so when it hit the wall, it didn't reflect that bigger sound on the bricks and whatnot. And so there were different ways of setting up, you know, chairs and trying to be accurate and pass it through the hallway and whatnot. So as I was growing up, you had to be creative in how you use your time and entertain yourself, because kids get it quite easy these days with, you know, iPads and switches and all the technology. So, you know, we were board games and puzzles and sports and whatnot. So I think I just had a, you know, passion for sport in general, and just liked to be active, and found out quite early I could kick a ball quite good.
Now, speaking just before we started the show, you mentioned that come sort of year 11, year 12, you came into the orbit of a certain well-known coach. You name-dropped just before we started recording. Do you want to tell us that story?
Yeah, well, just being, you know, in the system, so to speak, of, you know, you play your club football, then you go and try out for your region team, which for me was Brisbane North, and then you go into the next competition and then try out for the Queensland team, and then you progress. And Ange Postecoglou was the head coach of the under-17s national team at the time, that would watch Queensland versus New South Wales, the big national tournament. And yeah, I was one of the highest goal scorers in that tournament, and he chose me for his squad. So while I was in the under-17s, I was in the under-20s at the same time, and he took charge of both teams. So they always correlated on different, you know, school holiday times, or under-17s was always on school holidays, because majority of us were actually all of us were in year 12. So we couldn't really leave outside of school hours. So, and then the under-20s was actually kind of any time throughout the year. So I would get plucked in and out of the 20s as well, because he would like to bring me for experience to be into the 20s, as well as being in the prominent player for the under-17s. So I can't remember the exact year. It must have been 2004, 2005 sometime. There was a World Cup for the under-20s first. So Ange took me to that for experience, so I can be around and see how things work. So then a few months later, go into the under-17s World Cup, ready and prepped, ready to go, be a big important player for the team. But then I was notified I wasn't allowed to play in that World Cup, because I'd already been at a previous World Cup in that calendar year, which there was a bit of rulings about. So I did all the qualifyings for both teams, scored a lot of goals. I think I've got some pretty good stats there for both the 17s and 20s. And yeah, and I wasn't able to play one World Cup game in that time. So it was very, very disappointing.
That seems very harsh.
Yeah, it was a rule that kind of, you know, someone didn't really come across that. So yeah, it was very disappointing, and that was a big challenge in my career as well. Starting out early as a kid, like I'm here, ready to go, and, you know, crying in a hotel room the day before we were meant to play Turkey. So yeah, it was difficult, but it was a challenge that I had to overcome. And a few months later, I was, you know, trialling overseas, and you know, eventually 6 months later, I think it was, then I was overseas playing in Denmark for Brøndby.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on that, because you had a couple of spells in Europe, one, as you said, in Denmark, and then another one in Hungary with a club that I had to do some serious research on. So maybe if we just leave Denmark for now, we might come back later. Just tell me a little bit about your experience in Hungary.
Yeah, so that was just after Melbourne City days, and I was just looking for something to get to in that transfer window. I think I'd kind of been at Melbourne City long enough that, my football wasn't going the way, it probably should have. Probably been in the one place for too long in the same system and whatnot. So it was ready. It was time. I was ready to move on. And then, an agent that I had just spoken to, he had found that quite quickly, and it was a new challenge. It was back in Europe, and I always thought that using that as a stepping stone to either get to a better European club after, or I didn't really know how it was going to go, but I signed for 2.5 years just to have the experience. I was back in Europe. And I probably should have done a bit more research on it, but I still created some great memories and some great friends and some great experiences. We were on the border of Austria, so we would go across to Austria and do our grocery shopping and whatnot, because the quality of food, the standards that they have in the grocery shops there is better than Hungary. We'd go to Vienna a lot. We'd drive to Budapest and go down to Slovenia and Croatia.
It's all so close, isn't it?
So, well, I went there for an experience as well, and obviously to play football first, but really enjoyed my time. And the football was okay. I think that there's a few top teams in Hungary, especially Ferencváros at the moment, and they're doing okay in Europe from what I see. They're beating a few quite prominent teams. So to play in that stadium in Budapest against them, I've scored there, against a big crowd, and it felt great, because you've got these little guys. We were in a 60,000 population city, and then travelling 2.5 hours to Budapest. It's quite difficult to get a result. The furthest we'd drive is probably 6.5, 7 hours across the country by bus to the games, and then you literally jump on the bus and then drive back, and you're home at 2 a.m. 7 hours later. So it provided experiences and things that I'll remember for a while.
Because Haladas was the name of the club, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay, just to clarify. So I know we're jumping around, which we were probably inevitably going to do, just the way the conversation goes. I do like to talk to you about North Queensland Fury. We always touch on this. I know a lot of our viewers and listeners will have a bit of a soft spot for Fury. I don't know whether it was the kit. I don't know whether it was Franz Stracker's cream jacket, or just the fact that they were, I suppose, rather callously allowed to sort of go to the wall by the powers that be. But I think a lot of people have a soft spot for North Queensland Fury. You were there for a couple of years. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences there?
Yeah, so North Queensland Fury, it's I signed there on loan from Bromby, and I was then signed permanently after the first year. I was given a 2-year deal from that second year, and I was the only player to have a contract for the third year, but unfortunately they got their license taken off them. It was a very fun place to live and to play football. Despite crowd numbers, they were still healthy compared to a lot of teams now. Back then you think 6,000-7,000 wasn't great, especially a lot of the time throughout the summer. It's torrential rain and people still came out, and the noise was loud, and we created some good atmospheres, and it was, like I said, very enjoyable. And then you look at some of the crowds now in the A-League, and it's well under par of what it should be this far on. It was hot. It was humid, so we had an advantage when we played a lot of games. But then again, the quality of the whole squad wasn't as good as others, and that kind of came out towards end of seasons and whatnot. And there was times we were training at 7:30 in the morning. We were done by 8:45, and we were on the golf course by 10 o'clock. Our owner of the first year, he had a golf course, so he'd look after us and we'd go play. So there was a lot of leisure during those times. But from that first and even second year, the dressing rooms that I've been involved were fantastic, and the group that they were able to get together were fantastic. I'm still friends with people now. I've got even Bo Bush, the the boss
Yep.
of the PFA at the moment. He's an ex-teammate of mine that I've got a good relationship with. Still playing against Jack Hingett this season and things like that. And there's probably one or two other boys in there that I'm probably forgetting that I come across here and there. Daniel McBreen's now commentating, doing that stuff. So the people that have been in and out of there know those experiences as well. And of course, as a lot of the Glory fans know, the famous Robbie Fowler was up there the first year.
He was.
He's the best man to have on your quiz team, that's for sure. So we did a few quizzes on Tuesday nights with Wednesday off. So a few, I was going to say...
He's a bit of a trivia
I was going to
king,
say
is he?
the abbreviation of Coca-Cola, but anyone referring to that, and Robbie Fowler might have, put two and two together. But he's, very intellectual, and we had a great time off the field there. Probably too much, but I met my wife up there as well. My kids are born in Townsville, so it's still close to home. There's a huge community of football up there, grassroots, and there's a beautiful stadium as well that the North Queensland Cowboys rugby league team use, which is state of the art. And Brisbane Roar have played. I think they played against Aston Villa there a few years ago, and I was actually in the crowd watching that pre-season game. So look, it's a place where I think in the future it could be a reignition of a football club, which I'd love to see. But at the moment, my focus is Perth, and I love it here.
So a significant kind of chapter of your personal and professional career, I guess, up there. And then another very successful one for yourself was at Wellington. I think it was just the one season, if I remember rightly. You'd been in Europe, I think, then you came back, 18, 19, formed a partnership with Roy Krishna there that absolutely terrorised the competition. I think it was 30 goals between you, if I remember rightly. Yeah. What was it about playing with Roy? Why did you click so well?
Roy and I just felt like we were very similar players. You know, we could run deep, we could come short. We both had good shots, and he scored probably double the goals than I did. But Roy is such a lethal striker. He was comfortable in Wellington as well. I was comfortable there too, not to make any excuses, but he just had confidence. He was kind of the man of the team, so it made him feel good as well. And everywhere he's gone after, he's been very successful, and he's an out-and-out striker. And I always would think about Roy, and if he was in some big teams around the world, if he was fed the way he's been fed sometimes with assists and whatnot, I definitely think he could have gone to some bigger clubs. But I would have loved to have seen that, but for reasons other than what happened, we went to India together as well, and that was great, and we loved every minute of it, and he loved it so much that he stayed for another 3 years. So he's definitely one I loved playing with and forming that partnership. But look, there was times at Wellington where I wasn't starting. I was on the bench a lot. And I had to work very hard to get a starting spot. And once I proved that to Mark Rudan and, fought and then did well, I kept it. So that was a good year for myself, and it was good for Roy and I. And then we continued that on for another 3 years in India together. So, look, he scored some spectacular goals and some very short tap-ins, but they all count. So, yeah.
Were you good friends off the pitch? And the reason I ask is I know I did an interview years ago with Bobby Despotowski where he said that him and Damien Murray would, when they'd go out and play golf, and they would sort of discuss their plans for the upcoming game and what had happened in the previous game and different runs and this kind of thing and how they would combine. Yeah. Did you sort of do a little bit of that with Roy?
We had a few discussions here and there, but it was more so, when we're lying around on the gym floor or, talking at a coffee shop when there's other players there or whatnot. I don't think we ever specifically said, let's meet up and play golf. He wasn't a golfer, but it was more just our knowledge of the game, and we just want to attack and go forward. we talked a lot about when either of us on the wing, where do we want the ball? And generally, when we were playing, because we were very quick, and it was if the two of us are going forward, there wasn't support coming quick enough. So it was like, well, if I'm only one striker in the box, you're obviously going to cross it to the front post. So we knew that every time that the ball would go wide, that's whoever the striker was that was inside just had to go front post, because you can beat everyone in the box if you make the run to the front post. So that's what a lot of young kids have to kind of learn, because if they try to pick you out in the middle and whatnot, it's got to be probably a lucky ball, because even a nice cross can find you, but it can still be defended easily and be read a little bit better. So front post runs for a number 9 striker are always, the most dangerous, and that's where we had a lot of combinations, especially in India. He had a lot of goals front post as well, not just from my assist, but I just knew where he was running. He knew where I was running, because we knew what each other were doing, because we were so similar. So yeah, whether it was coming to feet and then spinning and going, but it came from months and months of practice and over at the training ground, and that was the fluid motion of training, how we did games and whatnot in training. It wasn't just, set pieces or possession drills or whatnot. We played a lot of football, especially at Wellington as well, and then leading into India as well. And look, India was a lot more probably defensive work from the team, defensive structure, and then we would just counter. So it was very enjoyable from both ways. Yeah.
Well, you segued us perfectly onto India, which saved me from having to crowbar that in. Just tell us, we'll come on to the football shortly, but just tell us about, I know it was effectively, I suppose in some ways certainly affected, I wouldn't say necessarily ruined, but certainly massively impacted by COVID, the time that you spent there. But what were your overall impressions of the country itself?
Yeah, it was a bit disappointing being there over the 2 years of COVID, just purely based on I had some young kids that needed a dad as well, and they weren't around as much. It was very difficult for them to be in the bubble, especially because of the food and accommodation and whatnot. The first year I was there was great. We got treated really well in the hotel, and the crowds were amazing. The feeling that you would get walking out even for the warm-up at our home stadium was, electric. Even at some other grounds around India as well, were hugely, intimidating in a way, especially Kerala Blasters. We go out there, and before it's even as we go and to inspect the pitch, it's just about full, and it's just a sea of yellow and things like that. So it's a very passionate country, whether it be football or cricket. So no matter the facilities or the roads or, the poverty and all this, you still had that one focus of football, and you still got the same feeling. It's sometimes even better feelings than walking on the A-League pitch, purely based that the atmosphere isn't created the same. Maybe at big derbies and whatnot, and finals games, but, I dare say a local match of, going out, round 5 or 6 where, you're just trying to pick up points, the atmosphere is not the same. You get treated like kings, you get driven everywhere, and, things are cheap as well, so you kind of have a good lifestyle in that sense. It's not forever, so you just got to make it count. You go out to restaurants and try to do a bit of touristy stuff in between. But I do feel like the COVID seasons did impact myself personally. Based on what we could do with, on the field and our training restrictions. And some days we'd be in isolation, or some weeks, and then they let you out for 2-3 days of training and then got to play a game. And then all these soft tissue injuries start coming into the team, and then COVID, so then you miss it out. So I wasn't as successful as I'd hoped, but I still won a few things there, and, still enjoy my time and look back on it glad that I got to experience it, got to see a lot of the things I did. And again, I still keep in contact with quite a few players who still play there, mainly foreigners, but I get a few ex-staff members who will message me and do things here and there, and they always get a bit of a buzz when you reply, which is good for them. And again, they're all very generous with their time and what they do. I think it's because I spend time speaking to them and finding out about their lives as well, which they greatly appreciate. Yeah.
So, in your opinion, having played there and enjoyed success there, what's the sort of realistic, I suppose, ceiling for Indian football? I mean, how big can it be?
Look, I look at my old team, Mohambagan, which has got Jamie McLaren at the moment. They've got Jason Cummings there as well. They tend to get the best Indian players, the national team players there as well. And there's Dimi Petrados is there. So there's no budget really for them. They get around the salary cap there somehow. But they're competitive in India, but it's once they start to move up the ranks of Asia, then it just falls apart in some ways. You just see that level, the fitness levels aren't the same as some other Asian countries as well. They might do good in the immediate vicinity of India against, teams in Bangladesh, and if it's Sri Lanka or Pakistan or whatnot. Nepal have some teams as well. But once you start expanding, where we got dealt a lesson in Kazakhstan, we had to travel, there, and we went into Tashkent and then had to catch a train and a bus. Like, it was madness. And our food came from a little kebab shop, and the waiter was running out of the restaurant to get the food, and so it was like we had cold pizza the next day because it was hot at dinner one time. So all these things from an Indian team and the facilities, travelling for AFC does start to go back. So I feel like they are trying to compete with Asia, but I think it'll still be difficult because of the local base players. And the foreigners don't run the Ks that they would, say, in Australia. I remember seeing a stat, a few of us boys had run 9 or 8.5, 9 kilometres in a game, and we were getting praise for that, whereas we'd do that in training sessions, or if I wasn't running 11, 12 Ks a few years ago in certain games, they'd be saying, oh, you didn't work hard enough, Yeah. So there's different expectations and levels in the league, but I think, once they get out of that, they start to struggle. And Odisha, that was one team who came and played Central Coast a few months ago for an Asian, wasn't sure if it was Asian Cup or another tournament, but they got dealt 4-0 by Central Coast, and Central Coast weren't flying at that time. They were doing well, but Odisha was the best team in, or top 2 teams in the league at the time. So, levels are different. Again, you go for the money, you go for the culture, you go for a different experience. And if you're lucky to get a long-term deal, then good on you. If not, then some people have been in there for 6 months or a year and then, don't get re-signed. So we've seen that little cycle happen.
All right, well, let's get on to your dream car rental dream team, because this could take a while. This could take a while. You've played with a lot of players over the years, and I did give you sort of 24 hours notice of this to, rather than just drop it on you. I thought that was fair.
Yeah.
I thought that was fair.
Fair enough.
The only restrictions, as always, you've got to be in it.
Yep.
Captain, obviously. And we do have to have a proper goalkeeper, because we have had people suggesting that they might want to play a rush. We're not having rush goalkeeper. So let's start at the back. Who's in goal?
So in goal is my Hungarian Haladas goalkeeper. His name is Gabor Kirili, famous in the Premier League for
the trousers,
for getting his pants and having to wear track pants.
Yep.
And that is now his trademark. So he's played at the Euros and all different tournaments and clubs. I think it was Fulham, Crystal Palace.
Palace, definitely,
Yep, in his track pants. So Gabor has played so many games. He's an absolute legend in European football. And he's a legend at every Premier League club he was at too. So he's my number one. And yeah, I don't think I scored many penalties against him in training. So he's very intimidating, but one of the nicest guys.
I think the great thing about the trackies was they didn't even look like they were branded. They looked as if he got them from Lowe's like an hour before the game.
Yep. They were cheap looking, but he's made an absolute killing off that brand that he's made.
Good on
so
him.
he actually, when I first arrived there, he actually used to be my translator from Hungarian to English, and the coach would be talking and going on, and he'd be like, "You boys understanding?" And then we said to Gabor, there was a few of us who needed translation. We said, "Gabor, what's he saying?" He said, "He's talking absolute smack, so I'm not even going to bother translating that. So if it's important, I'll translate." So I respect him for not wasting his time on that. Yeah,
100%.
So that's Gabor Kirali.
All right, so Gabor's in goal. Let's who are we going for at the back?
How many defenders can we have?
Up to you. Depends how
So that's
attacking
one.
you want to be.
Someone who's a great leader, someone who wants to win, someone who has experience. I have to go my mate Andrew Durante. He lived for those small-sided games. I've never seen him lose one when I was with him at Wellington or in other little teams. So I definitely say I'd have to go him. I might go one more defender. So then it's actually, so what does it mean? So then it's going to be, I'd have to say Aziz Bayic
Okay.
as a lefty, because he can shoot, he can tackle, he's nippy, he's cheeky, he gets under the skin of boys in six-a-side, so I'll go him. So then we're moving up into, there's only 3 spots left.
Yeah, that's it. But I do like the way you're really tailoring this specifically to six-a-side rather than just picking 6 of the
so
best
obviously
players.
I'm there. I'm going to have to put myself up with Robbie Fowler and David Villa. I was going to say Del Piero because I was in a squad with him for the A-League All-Stars. So we trained together, but when I came on the pitch...
Oh, you replaced him, didn't you?
He was sub for me, so he was coming up. So I actually never got to play with him, but I had 10 days of being in the same team with him. So I'm not going to say him. So I'll just say that, I'll stick with David Villa, Robbie Fowler. I might play the number 10 so I can have some, longer range shots, I think.
I reckon you'd have some work to because you're basically the only midfielder in that side. Bayic, I suppose, could kind of... he's up and down, isn't he, on the shuttles?
Depends how big the pitch is. But, I've played with a lot of good players before and, throughout the time in the A-League, there's been, some really good foreigners. So it was very difficult to pick, but I think because you gave me that notice, it was easy to... ramble off those last 2 anyway.
I appreciate the amount of thought, that you've given it, and the depth that you've gone into is fantastic. In contrast with some of our other guests, I think, to be perfectly honest, mate. We're coming towards the end now. I just wanted to talk to you about your life post football. We touched on it at the start, and also touched on the fact that you're a busy man. You've always got different things going on. We've seen you on the radio recently on Nova as well, enjoying yourself on there. What are some of the things that you're looking to get into post-football? Yeah,
look, I've really found comfort and by being in Perth and really want to dig my roots in here post-career, whenever that comes to be. I think I've made a lot of good networks and a lot of good friends already, so I think it would be silly to kind of get up and leave and go back to the East Coast and try and start something. From what discussions I've had with people and people I've met and people who want to help me with in business or football or whatnot, I'm very passionate about trying to get more Indigenous kids into football. But also the ones that are in football, how do we develop them to become a Perth Glory player? So I'd love to start in WA, to go throughout as much of WA as I can and in a way be a talent scout, but that's not my job or role. It's to get more kids involved and find healthy pathways for their lives as well, giving them the opportunity to look, all right, if you're good enough, do you want to come to Perth and potentially come into a program that, is set up in the future for them. So there hasn't been too many people who've done that. John Moriarty Foundation had doing a great job with that as well, which I'm working with. There is also an aspect of me being hands-on and having the contacts that I have with Glory as well, and the clubs in and around Perth. I just think that the more Aboriginal kids you can get involved, the better the league can be. Every Aboriginal player that is played for that in an A-League team has represented Australia at some level. I don't think anyone could name a men's player specifically to say that he didn't play for either the 17s, 20s, 23s or the Socceroos. So there's been a big history of those players come through, and I just think if we get that quota up, imagine how many more Socceroos we could have from the pool, because they're energetic, they're agile, they're fit, they're fast. So if you can just mould them into a team and know how to interact with teammates and all that, coming from the bush or coming from smaller cities and whatnot, that's a big goal of mine. So looking to do that, looking to stay in football as well, and giving back what I can. But I've thought about it a lot. I haven't, I've made plans. I just can't give everything away just yet.
That is fair enough. The bottom line is that you're still going to be around, and
Yes,
that is fantastic news for all of us, mate. We've come to the end. I think we are going to have to go for a part 2, because as we there's so much that we haven't even touched on. Your work with PFA, you're now on the executive there. There's a million and one things that we could explore. So if you're up for another visit, maybe we could do that in the
Definitely.
future.
I just had a thought I could do a competition for the next few games and go as George, and whoever can pick the game that I'm George might get a
There we go. Look out! Look out! If
maybe the limp might give it away. Yeah.
I don't think you'll be doing flips if George isn't doing somersaults.
Maybe next season we'll see.
At the next home game, it'll be the giveaway.
Yeah.
But no, Willow, thanks so much for coming in, mate. Really appreciate it. Thanks very much to everyone who is downloading this show as a podcast. It's been fantastic. We're seeing plenty of downloads, plenty of views as well on YouTube if you want to watch it in video format. Thanks as always to Drimtel, our fantastic show sponsors, your connection to possibilities. Thanks as well to Jeff and Jack for their great technical work here in the studio. And we will be back next week with another Glory story. So until then, go well and go Glory.